Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 49 brought to you here live from XL Energy Center. And got to give a special thank you, of course, to our amazing local friends, Waggle Golf, 9 Mile Brewing, and, of course, just down the road here, Barrel Theory Beer Company. Joe, here live in person, which we've only done like a couple of times. It's still like, I don't know, it feels a little weird, not like looking straight at your face on the screen and talking, but we're here. We got things to talk about. What's going on?
Yeah, it's obviously been, a busy last couple of weeks, and there'll be a couple more week push until the Four Nations tournament. But the Wild are obviously going through their struggles, and the Gophers are going through a little bit of a hiccup as well. So it's one of those dog days of a hockey season where you can sense teams can struggle, but I think the concernometer is a little bit different for both of those teams.
Yeah, it very different, and for very different reasons too. And quick rundown, going to get into the Gophers here, going to talk some Minnesota Wild, but we also banked for you guys the other week, literally right before he got the unfortunate news. We were able to sit down with David Jiricek for a great chat with him. And of course, we'll wrap up with our hot take segment as always. But yeah, Joe, you led off with it there. Gophers are definitely not happy with how this past weekend went. Now, I will say, like, everyone looks at the box score and sees that Friday night was a 9-3 game. It was a competitive game for the first half of the game. Like, I didn't hate what I was seeing. There's definitely things that I know Bob would tell you he wants to clean up and things that need to be changed. But the end of the second and the third period completely got away from them. Like, it was a boat race. It didn't go great. And we're seeing the biggest issue. I do think Michigan State is a really good roster and a really good team. If you can't solve Trey Augustine, you're in trouble. You
are, and like especially the way their offense is constructed, State can score as they showed you. And so I think, and Minnesota's been there before on their own end, having, elite level goaltending or they can carry you down the stretch. And you saw it last year in the Frozen Four with Denver, riding their hot goaltender. So obviously not the end of the world you lose, and then the score maybe is, was closer than it indicated. But those are still measuring stick games against teams you're going to be, fighting for not only in the conference, but also, in the playoffs, and they hope for the Frozen Four berth. So definitely learn a lot from those kind of losses. I don't know if that was a kick the can kind of game for Bob Motzkow. They play better the next night, obviously, for the tie. But aside from that, if you're a Minnesota Wild fan and watch that Charlie Stramel, was that 21 out of 25 on the dot on Friday or something like that? Was that?
I didn't even see the final on the dot, but tell you what, at the right times, the boy can move.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's talked for a while about his skating, and like we saw it a little bit in the second game against the Gophers back in December, but like this weekend, he was moving, he was buzzing, and he's just playing a completely different game. Looks so much more confident in himself, and per the continued reports from you and Russo, I really, really hope that he is going back for one more year with Michigan State. Just have that stability, like a year without turmoil and crazy change. Like, let him stay there and see if he can really elevate another rung or two.
I think so. I think he's going to stay, and unless something else changes with the roster or whatever. But it only makes sense to build on what he's done this year. There's no real rush. I mean, he could play pro hockey, and so he could play in Iowa and have that opportunity. I don't think he's ready to play the NHL at this point. So what gets him to that best level is it playing it for a top team in the country in a top line, top six role. You already know what you're going to get there. You already know he trusts his coach and everything like that.
Sure.
And I think what gets lost too is not just the trust factor with Nightingale or the fact that he got a fresh start, is he really worked on his body in the summertime. He worked on his conditioning, worked on his skating like you saw, and that was a difference maker for him. He needs to be able to move quickly even at his size. No matter how good he's at the draw, no matter how good he's a power forward or further that, he has to be able to skate. And that's what Brad Bombardier, with director of player development at the Wild, told me. He's like, used to be he would kind of tail off later in shifts. He would like kind of just get worn down or tired and wouldn't be able to have that same level. And now you're seeing him all the way through and playing into overtime and playing really strong brand of hockey. So I think another year at Michigan State would do him really well.
For sure. And Gophers now, unfortunately, fall victim to a series sweep at the hands of Michigan State. But we got Wisconsin coming here this weekend, and we're looking to do the same to them. Can we get the series sweep? And it's going to be interesting to see what the lines look like, because now we've largely got a healthy roster. Bob's got all of his guys. And Eric Vigo, like very astutely pointed out last week on Gopher Puck Live, really like what Oliver Moore and Matthew Wood are doing together. Like they definitely understand each other's games. Like they play such different styles that they kind of complement each other really well between Oliver Moore's speed and just the engine. Like he is always going. And then you got Matthew Wood, who's way more cerebral, slow down the game, use your body to protect the puck. And they ended up getting split up on Saturday, but I want to see him come back with them. I'm curious to see if, like, is it Kurth or Lamb that could play with them long term, but just seeing how all the lines shake out, because I think the only one that Bob seems like fairly set on is Paulson centering Zemer and Snuggerud, because it's looked good for the most part.
Good. Snuggerud had another good game as well, like that. So I think overall those lines are going to change throughout the course of a season. Other than, remember a couple of years back, that top line, they weren't going to change that one with Nyes and Cooley and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't do that.
They would do that. Bob's too smart to do that. But I think overall, this is the time to tinker with that, to see how guys play. But usually, even in the NHL, they like to go with duos, right? And a third person that works well with them. If they usually have three little duos, you could work well together. That third guy could be the complementary piece. So it doesn't have to be the same three guys all the time. But usually it's the two guys, like you said, with Wood and Oliver Moore, or, if Snuggerud and Zemer or whatever. Find those duos that work really well together, plus add that complementary piece that can kind of fit and kind of slide through.
Totally. And it's going to be interesting, too, and not to get ahead of ourselves here and get through the end of the season, but I'm very intrigued by both Oliver Moore and Matthew Wood. Do they come back next year? Either, both, neither? Like, it's going to be really interesting, because I feel like Sam Renzel, unfortunately, is like very destined to join Chicago as soon as the season's over. I don't know with Oliver Moore. I'm not saying that he can't or shouldn't. I just don't know if the Blackhawks feel like there's more for him to gain from another year and kind of stepping up and being the man when Snuggerud leaves next year, or are they like, nope, we want to get him out here and we want to start developing him ourselves. So,
well, I think Chicago's in a state of flux right now, right? Like you just saw them trade Taylor Hall and become, kind of like the bank, I guess, in the trade for the Rantanen one. So, but I think there is some pressure there to show some improvement, even though they were in that long stage of a rebuild. Didn't expect to be 29th in the league, right? So I think there might be some pressure for them to make some moves this summertime, whether that's going after a Rantanen or a Mitch Marner, or going after a big name, or being an offer sheeting somebody. So I think that'll often, their plans there will also affect what their plans are for some of their prospects. Like, do you really want to bring Oliver Moore in to play a fourth line role or whatever? Like, what does their depth chart look like? What's better for him? And I think a lot of cases is for that, some of those players like that, unless you're like the superstar, and it's better to stay the extra year. I think Jimmy Snuggerud found out the right way that he came back. I think his detail into his games are much better. Yeah. The scoring, the elite shot is always going to be there. The NHL is always going to be there for him, barring injury. So I think he learned a lot by coming back, and it's only going to help him be more ready to step in with the St. Louis Blues.
Completely agree. All right, well, on the other side, we'll get into a little bit more Minnesota Wild talk. Hey, Fellowship of the Rink listeners. January is the perfect time to swing by 9 Mile Brewing, Bloomington's first and only tap room, where our friends are serving up some incredible brews. Whether you're taking a break from alcohol or not, they've got you covered with their brand new NA Hoppy Wheat Ale, full of bold, hoppy flavor without the buzz. And for those craving something a bit juicier, check out Grace of the Goddess, their juicy IPA, or you can sip on the smooth Kernzaban alt beer or simple twist of grain, their crisp Kernza lager. Both brewed with the Kernza grain, if you couldn't pick it up from the names. And keep your taste buds on alert. They did actually just drop this past week Bumbleberry Sour. All of you that are into the sweet, fruity, any kind of sour beer, get out there and give it a try. And make sure before you run through January, every Thursday, the THC Thrive 4-pack BOGO. And, of course, check out all of their events at 9milebrewing.com. That's the number 9, MILEBREWING.com. You can check out both this week and looking forward to their legendary birthday cribbage tournament, Thursday, February 6th. $200 cash prize up for grabs. Check it out. All right, time for some Minnesota Wild talk. And got to start like we do every week with just the GULAG, the Minnesota Wild injuries. At least we've got some guys back, and we're excited. Yeah. We got Spurgeon, we got Kaprizov. They've had an impact already. But where do we stand with some of the other guys that are currently lingering outside the lineup?
I know as of recording this podcast, I don't think that Brodin or Johansson had been really actively skating as much. So we'll probably find out more, and the team comes back to action after the off day on Monday. So we'll know more practice on Tuesday, which will be before this airs, and Wednesday. The road trip continues in Toronto, which I'll be on, Montreal. But yeah, the getting Kaprizov back, getting Spurgeon back was big, even though it didn't show up in those first couple of games, where I think guys probably felt it'd be a little easier when those guys came back, and it really wasn't, when a couple rough home losses. But the last two guys on that injury report list are Johansson with the concussion and Brodin with that lower body injury. And Brodin could come back at one practice and all of a sudden be ready to go. So that's the way his MO has been in his career. So, but obviously they certainly miss having him back. But,
all right, quick bonus piece that we had to throw in here for you guys, being that we recorded live on site Monday, and some big news here that popped up on Tuesday before the episode drops. So, Joe, I'll pass it to you on the big news with Kirill Kaprizov.
Yeah, it's obviously bad news for the Wild. As my colleague Mike Russo and I at The Athletic first reported on Tuesday morning, that the Wild were considering surgery for Kirill Kaprizov, and they end up scheduling it for later this week for their star winger, who has been dealing with that lower body injury, as you know, since the Christmas break. And he tried as much as he could to rehab it and take his time and get back. But as John Hyden said, he was just uncomfortable each game. He was probably around 60% in both conversations with himself, the team, doctors, just made a decision that he will have surgery that will put him out minimum, as Bill Guerin said, 4 weeks. So it could be the 4 to 6 week range, which does mean, they get a break here because the Four Nations tournament will take 2 weeks of that. So that's kind of fortuitous timing for that, but it's not fortuitous timing in the sense that this won't mean there'll be this big, huge splash at the trade deadline, because he's expected back before the end of the regular season. So there's good news and bad news with that. You can't find somebody that can replace Kirill Kaprizov internally from Iowa or whatever, and you can't go out and get somebody with the cap space that they have. So, but it's essentially that they want to make sure that he's 100% ready to go. They gave it a shot at the rehab side, and Kirill wanted to come back as soon as he possibly could. But you can just tell, as dangerous as he is, he wasn't quite as explosive the last few games. And so, now you know why.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of fans are going to be mad, like, oh, have him sit out. We want to be able to bring someone else in, pull the Vegas, pull the Tampa. Like, reality is, you want Kaprizov back for as many of those games as possible if you even want to have a shot of getting into the playoffs. Like, is that a concern? Do you see maybe not like trying to replace Kaprizov, because like you said, we aren't going to be able to have the LTIR covered through the end of the year, but does this change Guerin's plans for how he's going to approach the trade deadline?
Well, as of now, it doesn't, because, he won't have a lot of space to do much. Right. And I know people want him to pull a Tampa or a Vegas or whatnot, but the fact of the matter is, at this point, especially without Kaprizov for the next 4 weeks, they're going to be fighting it just to make the playoffs, with the way things are going right now. And so I think if you're going to say, sit him the rest of the post deadline game, which is about 19 or 17 games, like that's a lot of points to be risking there, to be quote unquote having him sit out, which they wouldn't do any. I don't think Kirill Kaprizov, people forget the players don't want to just sit out. Right. They're not going to sit out for some sort of fake injury. They want to play, and he's as competitive as a player as I've ever been around. So that's kind of the bad news for fans who want to do armchair GM and get whoever else at the deadline, Besser or Nelson or Miller or whatever. But this obviously the big story is that the top player for the Minnesota Wild will be out at least 4 weeks after surgery. And the good news is that he's, in theory, he'll be back to 100%, back to his usual self, and with plenty of runway left for the regular season, and then be good to go for the playoffs, assuming that the Wild make it. I know a question that we all had was, did they consider surgery sooner, like back in late December when he was going through that? And Bill Guerin said today that, surgery is usually the last resort, kind of an invasive procedure. There was a thought that, he could come back and take his time to rehab it and and play, which I agree from up, it's easier for us to say to just go have surgery, not having to go through it yourself. So, but yeah, that was one thing where potentially they could have, got taken care of beforehand and him being back by now or whatever. But that was the case where they felt at that particular point that going through this rehab route would get him back and be able to play versus the surgery. And now they decided, instead of pushing it even more and having him play at 60%, to shut it down and have him have the procedure and get him back sooner than they can.
From what you guys have been able to surmise on this, Joe, do you get any sense that the reason that they made the decision, it's happening this week, has any influence from Four Nations being like, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to get this in and get it started so that there is that couple week, layover where he's not missing games? Like, we're talking about missing 4 to 6 weeks, and that's maybe 10, 12 games more than likely, which is very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably part of the calculus, but I think a big part of the reason is kind of how he felt coming back. Sure. And if he had felt 100% great coming back, or if there was no issues, or he could play through it and still be his usual Kirill, I think they wouldn't have done it. But I think the fact that I think John Hines said today that he was uncomfortable and that he struggled to get through things when he was on the bench. So and you have a guy who's your main superstar, a guy that can carry you a lot of games, dealing with that. Even though at 60%, Kirill Kaprizov is better than a lot of players in the NHL, that's not a way to kind of knowing that your season could be quite a bit longer here if you go where the team wants to go. So, but I do think that the timing of this, both him not feeling well and number two, knowing that you have this break coming ahead, makes more sense than anything else to get it done sooner than later.
Makes total sense. Well, all right. Had to get that in here for you guys, but we'll kick it back over to your previously scheduled programming.
But Ogren has been played well instead of Johansson while he's been out.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about Ogren's game, because I know he started on the second line, got bumped down to the third, and there was actually some chemistry built there pretty quick. What's your assessment? Is this a guy that's slowly progressing and kind of making a case to maybe be part of the team come postseason, or do you think there's still a little bit more we're waiting to see?
Well, I think he's had a good progress in the last 3 games. Like the first game, I think he was just nervous. He wasn't playing his game. And then I think the last 3, he's kind of said, hey, I can make these plays. I have the time and space to do this. And you're seeing his well-rounded game. You're seeing his vision. Like he had a couple assists in his second game back. And I talked to him the other day, and he just feels more comfortable and confident. I think they actually, going back to Iowa, as much as it's tough for guys, he said it was the best thing to happen to him. Kind of like what Marco Rossi did a few years back, just because he got a chance to get so many touches. He got to play in all situations. He got to play top line minutes, and obviously you saw the scoring touch return in Iowa for him. So whether he stays here when Johansson is back, I'm not sure, but I think he's definitely making a better case to be around for the postseason, or especially going into next year, having this kind of taste of NHL action and seeing how he can fit second line, third line, whatever. He's getting power play time too in the second power play unit. So it's all positive things for him. And I think as much as disappointing it was for him to go down, the time in Iowa has really helped him out a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but Russo on Worst Seats in the House said something to the effect of, if Marco Rossi was willing to sign a 7x7, the Wild would do it instantly, and they would host a press conference 10 minutes later. Where are we at with what you think is, either from the Wild's or his perspective, where do we sit as far as expectations for a next contract if Marco Rossi stays?
Yeah, and that's a big question for me. I'm still kind of not convinced that, there's going to be a long-term deal to be had for him. I think, if anything, I think it would most likely be along the line of a bridge deal if they get to that point. A lot of moving parts going on. You get to see what free agency looks like if you look what happens with Kirill Kaprizov and, how much you spend that way. But I would think that, I don't know if I'm really set on saying that there's going to be a long-term deal to be had for Marco Rossi at this particular point.
Sure.
My guess would be that if there is, if he's not moved or something else doesn't happen, it'd be more of a bridge deal type thing. But that obviously takes 2 to make that negotiating happen, whether he wants a long-term deal,
totally,
what the Wild are willing to pay. But I think it makes sense for them to get a better sense of how much he's looking for, how much it'll be, and that'll dictate whether, hey, do you sign this guy, or do you decide this is a moment to trade a guy at a higher value for what you might think you might need. So I think it's better to get a sense of, hey, how much of that, if they could be asking for the moon, you don't know. And then,
totally,
and then I don't know if, the Wild or other teams would be prepared to pay that much. But I think overall, the good news is he's had a really good season. Yeah. He's playing top line, top six role. He's growing in his game. Like, obviously, like a lot of the other players, he hasn't really had a lot of success against some of the best teams in the Western Conference or the division, the Colorados, like the Edmontons, things like that. And so there'll always be questions about that. But so yeah, I wouldn't say anything on a deal would be on the imminent front for him, but it's something to think about and see what he might want, and that'll how it'll affect the rest of your offseason decisions.
For sure. I mean, he obviously wants term, but you got to think for the Wild. Like, it's just unfortunate that this is like happening now instead of like a year or two from now, because I don't think it's as much a question about like who is Marco Rossi and do we want him here. It's what is our depth chart looking like 2, 3, 4 years from now, right? Because that's really what's going to determine, hey, how do you allocate resources to this player? So it's just tough that like we don't know what Yurov or Height are going to be. We don't know if Brock Nelson's getting signed, like,
or if they're saying I'll go after Brock Besser in the offseason or whatever. Like, so your top six all of a sudden looks a lot different if you sign Kirill Kaprizov long term, you get a Brock Nelson or a Besser or whatever, and then Yurov comes, and so there has to be a lot of those things that are moving parts that relate to how it'll affect maybe Marco Rossi. For
sure. And then Sunday, Blackhawks, Hines decides he's taking Trenyan and Chisholm out of the lineup. Is this just like, quick wake-up call? Is there something more behind this? Like, any sense, or am I overthinking it just by asking the question?
No, I think, he said it then. It was more of a reset for them. They both, he wanted Trenyan to play more a power forward game. That's what they brought him in for. And Chisholm has some recent struggles. They wanted him to sit. But I think it was more of like a message to the rest of the group, right? And I mean, those were maybe easier guys to sit versus other ones. But like, sure, the last stretch hasn't been acceptable to the Wild. You heard John Hines as pointed up quotes as he's had all season after the loss against Calgary about, they're choosing to lose versus choosing their heart, which was like the mentality that they went to training camp with, knowing with a team with the way they're set up, they have to play the certain style of game of competitiveness and physicality and just in that kind of that area to have a success in this league. And they did use that to fuel their first 40-some games where they were one of the top teams in the league, and then the last few weeks they've let it slip, and you've seen that in the standings too. And so it's kind of more of like trying to get more from their guys with that. And then Bill Guerin told our Mike Russo on Sunday, obviously in Chicago, it was unacceptable, and there were no excuses for it, especially the whole idea of Rasmus Andersson running around. He punched Flower in the face, and then there was not enough pushback, nobody stepping up and taking care of it. So I think a lot of things are kind of brewing here, which is why this road trip will be so important for them to kind of, where they're most successful is on the road, surprisingly, but these are some tough teams that are playing really well. Toronto, Montreal's in the wild card playoff spot. Ottawa trying to make a run to a playoff spot. Boston's a hard place to play. So this could be one of those pivotal moments as you start before that stretch of the Four Nations where you get a break. But clearly it's hitting more of a urgency or concern level if you hear both the head coach and the GM have some strong words publicly about where they are as a team.
And I think the play recently has dictated it to an extent, but do you also think that there's a little bit of credence to the idea that, we're a couple weeks out from the Four Nations tournament, want to make sure that, like, what few games we have in that gap, like, let's make sure we're not mailing it in. Like, let's capitalize, hit this, like, small run. It's just a little bit easier to concentrate and get the focus of, like, guys, let's get through these, like, 5 or so games, and then we can all have time to reset.
Absolutely. And like, as well as they give themselves a cushion in the standings early on, only down to 5 points between them and like the last wild card spot. So that can turn pretty quickly if a team gets hot or Wild loses 3 or 4 in a row. And you don't want to be the team that's on the outside looking in, fighting for that last wild card spot when it's so hard to make up points in the standings when everybody's kind of getting a loser point or whatever later in the year. So I think they've had the fortune of having Colorado having a down first half. You've seen other teams take dips, and now when Winnipeg's kind of pulling away a little further, that top spot. And ultimately, if you get the third spot, you have to play Dallas and go on the road again. If that's the case. Or if Colorado usurps them, you get a wild card and play Vegas. So they obviously have a lot of time left in the season to get things going, but they know the recipe. This guy's got to follow it.
And, I mean, you mentioned Colorado a couple times there. What did you make of the blockbuster trade that no one saw coming?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you don't see trades like this often in the salary cap era, and you don't see trades of this guy of this magnitude during the season. And I was surprised just because of how much of an important piece he is to Colorado, how it's rare to draft or get these guys anywhere. And I think Nathan McKinnon shared that sentiment of the fact that he was never in a million years he thought that he would leave. Or
his shock was what got my attention the most.
Yeah, I think that sends some shockwaves in the room. If Nathan McKinnon arguably the best player in the league, takes a quote friendly deal, whatever 12.5 is friendly, it will be friendly in the next couple of years.
It's already friendly.
It's the idea of keeping the core together, and then said key piece is traded because they don't think that they can pay him and Cale Makar and McKinnon $12+ million. Then that's obviously got to be a blow to the team, and knowing that they got Nietzsche, who's a really good player, and Drury, and so they got some good pieces back. But whenever time you trade the best player in a deal, you not all the time lose that deal, but
usually,
but it definitely doesn't help their chances in this year's playoffs losing a guy like that. So we'll see how it ends up helping them, flexibility wise going forward.
Yeah, it makes Carolina really interesting. But so on the flip then, because Elliot Friedman has been talking a lot about obviously the trade that went down, ramifications on both sides, why did it happen, what's going to happen moving forward. Continuously refers to Mikko Rantanen as a top 5 to top 10 player in the NHL. I'm not sure exactly where he fits in my I don't have a list that I'm continuously updating, but hearing top 5 to top 10 was a little surprising to me. Like, do you feel like it's like that solidified that he's somewhere in that 5 to 10 range, or is that maybe a touch aggressive?
Well, if you just start running off the list, we just did this earlier, right? If you have McDavid, Drysdale, McKinnon,
Matthews, McKinnon.
That's already 3 or 4, like whatever 5. You can get Kucherov in that mix. I think I've always said since I came here, I think Kaprizov's a top 10 player in the league. I just think overall his total body of work offensively, how hard he works, how hard he got the puck. I think if he gets in a playoff situation, he can show that. But I think Rantanen is at a pretty close to a similar feel, I think, to me than Kaprizov is. Like, when you play on a team with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, like we're in Makar in the top 10. Is Makar a top 10 player? I would think.
For me, he's top 5.
Yeah. So I think, you have him. All of a sudden, these people are adding these guys to the list. All of a sudden, that top 5 player becomes a top 7 player, becomes a top 8 player. Yeah. But I think we're kind of mincing words here. For this. The fact that these guys, there's a bona fide. He's a superstar in this league, and not many of those guys get dealt at this time of year.
Yeah, and the bigger reason to ask it too is just out of curiosity, because like his contract's obviously getting done this summer, and his is due. Gotta imagine Kaprizov's camp's going to sit and wait and see what happens there. Like, how do you compare the players? Like, are they kind of neck and neck? Like, they're different players, different skill sets, I know, but do you feel like the Rantanen contract is going to reflect Kaprizov's, or is that a benchmark that Kaprizov is going to be notedly over?
I mean, I think he was already got a benchmark with like a Draisaitl type contract, right? And like, I don't know if it all based on each team's economics and also importance. Like Craig Leopold told us already, like no one's going to bid higher than us. He's already set that standard of like no one's going to outbid us. So I think the fact that his importance to this franchise going forward also plays a role in what that number is versus in other teams have different things that they can sell, or other teams have this or that. But I think when you look at the big picture of not just comparing his market value to like a Draisaitl or a Rantanen, it's how does he fit in this particular scenario? What will take him to stay? So, and some guys will take less to stay, or some guys will say, we pay me the top dollar in the world and this and this. I think it is an interesting dynamic or comparison because of, if they don't sign Kaprizov, which they certainly hope to do so starting in the summer, like you would not want to get to the deadline with him next year. You just certainly wouldn't want to do that.
You can't even flirt with that.
But he's already, you get into a no move situation already with Kaprizov, right? So like that's where you lose the flexibility once you get past the summertime. So all of a sudden, that's something that you probably don't want to think about if you're a Wild fan. I'm sure the Minnesota Wild obviously want to get him signed this summer, right when they get able to do that. Preferably July 1st, July 2nd, whenever that is. But to see that kind of move happen in season with a division rival, a team that wants to play for Stanley Cup, I think it does send shockwaves around on the whole league. Yeah,
for sure. Last thing then before we kick it over to our interview with Jiricek, you got to sit down and spend some quality time with, I don't know if Wild fans are familiar, Zeev Buium.
Kind of a big deal. He's a big deal on campus in Denver. I got to spend some time with him before practice and after practice, and just obviously just such a charismatic kid, right? A lot of energy. I think Wild fans are going to love having him around the team and seeing him out there. Clearly following up a really good season last year with another equally as good season this year, winning World Juniors again, assist on the game-winning goal for the Gold. And he just talked to me about his time in Denver, like where he is in his life, like this feeling of accomplishing so much and being so close to the Minnesota Wild or so close to NHL. And he watches 90% of the games. Like his roommates are like, he watches the Wild games all the time, you know, and like he can see himself with that group. And so I talked to him about his time in Denver, his life off the ice, and also like that decision will be looming, which seems like it's in his hands. Like if he feels like he's ready after the season's over in Denver to come to play in the Minnesota Wild and what that looks like. So that story will be coming out soon as well. But obviously it's great to spend time with him in person versus we had him on the podcast a few months ago. Obviously a terrific talker, and I think people will figure that out too when he shows up here.
Yeah, that is without a doubt. Well, with that, let's kick it over then to that interview we mentioned earlier with one David Jiricek. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us for just about 2 months now, by way of Damon Hunt and 4 draft picks going out to bring in 6th overall pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets in the 2022 NHL Draft, David Jiricek. David, appreciate you jumping on with us, man.
Thank you, guys. Hey.
Weird question to start here. Throw you off a little bit. Do you have any idea what the Minnesota Wild logo is?
I mean, that's wild. I don't know. I don't know. Forest, sun, stars, right? Like something like that, or like is it something else, or?
Well, there's a million answers we've been getting. It's a really creative logo, right? And there's like people see a bear in there. You know, see people see the forest. Yeah, I think the bear's eyes. So
yeah,
one.
Yeah. I see forest there, sun, like wild. You know, like yeah. So I mean, it's a nice logo. I mean, I like it.
As you can see, the name of the podcast is Fellowship of the Rink, kind of a Lord of the Rings thing. And I know your countryman Lauco loves Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, all that stuff. Do you have like a movie or TV series or a nerd itch that you like?
I actually don't have that. I mean, like I actually, I'm like kind of like I have kind of old in me, you know, and I'm just watching like Czech TV. I'm just watching like Czech show there. So yeah, I'm that kind of guy. So I love to watch like Czech show, Czech movies. So I'm not like a Netflix guy or something like that.
Well, I hear you're into American football, though, right? So you've gotten into kind of the NFL and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love sports. I love all the sports. So I'm looking for all sports. I mean, I love tennis. So Australian Open right now. NFL playoffs. It's World Cup in handball right now in Denmark. Czech's playing there. So I'm just trying to track everything down. So yeah.
What games did you go to NFL? Do you go to some Cleveland Browns games?
Yeah, I was actually on the Browns game a few times. Twice. So that was nice. That was really nice. I kind of like it. But I mean, NFL is kind of. I was on a UFC too in Vegas.
Oh, really?
After my brother's draft, right after. So yeah, I'm that kind of guy. I mean, actually, these two sports. I mean, it's better to watch somewhere with the guys and somewhere in the basement or in the bar. So yeah.
I agree. NFL or Super Bowl is much better to be watched with people at a house versus.
Yeah, I mean, you see more. You know, you see more. That like the stadium's so big. You know, you actually couldn't see the line, you know, like the downs and stuff like that. So it's actually hard to track, but that atmosphere is tremendous.
Well, you mentioned your brother is obviously an incredible story. You know, the two of you guys both drafted first round picks and grew up together. I can only imagine what your house look like after all you guys played when you were kids playing together? Like, was there a lot of broken furniture? Or like,
yeah, there was a lot of hockey in the kitchen and in the living room. That's for sure. So I mean all over the place is some like tennis balls, kind of like stains on the wall. So like we came from outside. Like the ball is wet. You just snapping around. So yeah. I mean. It was kind of hard for my mom, but I mean that was fun for sure. So that actually played with us too. So yeah, it was fun.
So like you have a pretty good shot too. So you must have knocked out a few things. I don't know if you guys were getting things broken because you guys were physical, or was your shot, So
I don't know, not really. I mean, I'm just kind of like naturally comes. I mean, like I have actually like. I have a floorboard stick, so plastic stick, and I'm just shooting like floorboard ball, tennis ball, ping pong ball. Like I don't care. So I'm just trying to like get that feeling, in my hands, and I mean it's paid off right now.
How would you compare your game to your brothers? How would you compare your guys' style?
I don't know. I just don't want to like compare us, but it's kind of hard. He's still younger, so it's a lot of development for him. But he had actually good World Juniors. I was cheering for him. So for Czech Nation, it's huge to have 3 medals in a row from the World Juniors.
Like, who are the guys that you looked up to? Both of you guys, like, who are the players in Czech or wherever else NHL that were like your idols or mentors?
We actually like, I actually don't have one. I mean, I'm just like my first goal was like I want to play first league in my hometown in Pilsen, because I was kind of like go there and like clear the ice, for them. So it was like, yeah, it would be nice to play here one day, like after that was dropped, that was the next goal, first NHL game. So I'm just going step by step. But I've actually never had like like, yeah, I want to play like this guy,
For sure. And I mean, you guys were both at the forefront here of Czech hockey really making a big impact and a splash with World Junior. Like, talk about it. How have you seen that change in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of quiet 20 years for us before that. So yeah, I mean, it's so nice. I was there. We almost won a gold medal. So we lost in overtime. So we just kind of started it. So actually nice. I mean, we can beat like. We beat Canada in quarterfinals a few times right now. It's not often for us, like Canada, US. This is like such a big countries, like it's and Czech, like it's not. We have only 10 million people there, So it's big for us. We have soccer, we have hockey. That's 2 like big sports, and tennis too. So. It's every win, like every win for us, like this huge win is really big for us at home.
And I promise you, everyone in Minnesota cheered very, very loud both times that you guys knocked Canada out in the quarters. So thank you very much. I gotta say though, for the longest time, I grew up thinking that Sweden had the coolest national jerseys, and the last couple of years, Czech's giving them a run for their money. I mean, what do you think about those unique jerseys?
We had different logo right now. We have like a nation logo. We came back from like Lion. That Lion was like for 4 or 5 years. I was like, I actually like didn't like that much as these ones. I mean, these ones are like pretty cool. So like I've never wear them. So I hope it's coming. So they look actually really good.
Yeah, we love that. And I'm sure you saw it all over social, but were you out there when David Pastrnak was going crazy, climbed up to the roof to celebrate the World Championship?
Yeah, I mean, like I was in Cleveland, like I was focusing on the playoffs and minors there. So yeah, I mean that's cool too, right? Win a gold medal there. So at home, yeah, we have a good years right now.
What was your biggest memory from your NHL draft? I know it's like a dream come true for everybody, but just who all was there and like what the most vivid memory you have from that night?
Yeah, I mean that was like I mean great day for my family. That was my parents, my brother, agent. So there was like actually not a lot of people, but yeah, that was in Montreal. Montreal, big first overall. There was a like almost a full of almost a like full building.
Hmm.
So that was a cool experience. I mean, that's I mean once in a lifetime like that. So yeah, that was fun. If when I heard my name, I was so happy. So yeah.
And you went to your brothers, of course, right? And that was in Vegas in the Sphere. That
Yeah,
had to be such a wild experience. That.
yeah. I mean, Sphere was good. I mean, you just don't want to be in Vegas in summer because it's Uh, so yeah, I mean, it was great. She was great. That 4 days was fun. But I mean, Montreal is a hockey city, and like the people living with hockey, that's like religion there. So yeah, I mean, that's at please the next time like do it in Montreal. So. But I mean, Sphere was pretty awesome too. Like that's amazing how they build it. So
Well, I know it was exciting for you to get drafted, but I'm sure you were even just as proud to see your brother, or probably even maybe more emotional to see your brother get drafted.
I mean, maybe more emotional than I was. I mean, because like
Yeah.
yeah, I was kind of like enjoying it more. Like because with me in Montreal, there was more like work. Like I had to go for meetings for 2 days before for 2 days straight. I was like kind of like talk with teams. In Vegas, I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't need to do nothing. I can hang around. That's like vacation for me. I just need to be at I don't know 6 p.m. in the Sphere with the suit, and that's it. So yeah, that was fun. I mean. That was the last one for us, right? We don't have another. I don't have another brother so far. He's not coming. So yeah, that's nice. And I mean, right now we can focus on the career here.
How did you get to a UFC match? How did that happen? And what was that what was that experience like?
Yeah, because it was like Sphere was the draft was I don't know Friday and the UFC was Saturday, and there was like Prohaska was there against Pereira, the second the their second fight. The Czech guy lost, but yeah, that was fun too. That was fun too. That was in T-Mobile Arena, so where the Golden Knights played, and that was a cool experience too. I mean, we went with bunch of like Czech friends, so that was fun.
How do you obviously Columbus drafts you really high, thinks a lot of you. Like, how do you look back on your time in Columbus? How do you remember it, or you know, how do you feel about the time you had with them?
Yeah, I mean, they gave me the chance to like show up in the NHL, so I'm really appreciated about that, and uh, I mean, like every people there like act to me pretty good, so that was good. I mean, and I love it in Cleveland. I love it in Columbus. So I wish them all the best, and they were I mean buzzing right now. So good for them and I hope they can make playoffs.
Was it challenging at times when you were obviously you want to play every night, right? You want to be the guy. Was it challenging for a young guy like yourself to, have to sit a little bit and not have that kind of rhythm in your game that you usually would have?
Yeah, I mean, the start of the season was hard for me, that's for sure. I mean, the first 3 months, I didn't play much, and then if I play, I play not a big minutes, so it was kind of like frustrated for me, and I'm just wanting to play. I'm just wanting to play, get some, get in a game shape, and I found it here in Minnesota and in Iowa too.
Yeah. How did you find out you were coming to Minnesota? Like, I know there was a lot of things being thrown around.
I mean, we went with Cleveland. We went to Grand Rapids, and like there was like, I don't know, that's 6 hours drive with the bus. So I was sitting in the bus, and agent called me like, you were traded to Minnesota. So I spent the night in GR, and the next day I flew to Minnesota.
Just how would you kind of describe the experience? It seems like you're playing with a lot of confidence. It seems like you're having fun. It seems like you fit in. Like how would you kind of just describe what this has done for you, or what this meant to you to have another kind of a new chance with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great group of guys here. So I'm just wanna help the team, and that's like all I do is just to have fun with hockey. You know, I'm not gonna go to, like, I'm just gonna go day by day right now, and see what happens. But I'm just gonna leave 100% there, and that's all what am I doing right now.
That pass you made to Trenton for the goal, what did you see? I know you've been aggressive offensively, and I know you like to be up in the play, but did you kind of play on that, or how did you see him coming and kind of knew that? How did you kind of see that play develop?
Yeah, I saw him coming. I'm just went down the wall, and I saw him coming because I had the puck like on my backhand, so I'm just gave it to him. You know, it was like kind of relief for me because I was in the middle of all my backhand. So he was in a great spot. So I'm just gave him the puck, and he shoots and scored. So that was a great shot too.
Is that when you're playing kind of your best, as you're kind of getting up in the play, and you're using kind of your instincts offensively too? I know you take pride in your own end and being a good defensive defenseman, but is that when you're playing some of your better hockey, when you're being able to be aggressive up there?
100%. I try to be as aggressive as I can. That's my part of the game, and right now I want to be 100% in the zone, and be defensive defenseman, and that's what am I doing, and if I have a chance to jump on the play or make some play in ozone, I will do it. So that's great to like coaches like force me to do it, let me to do it. So that's great to have it here.
It's awesome to get a fresh start, right? Get a new chance and opportunity here in Minnesota. But how much did it help you making that transition from Columbus to Minnesota, seeing fellow countrymen both, in Iowa with Spacek and in Minnesota with Lauko?
I had a guy. That's great. But it's always great to have someone from home. I mean, these two guys are awesome. We have a few guys in Iowa. We have some Raska. So the other Czechoslovak. So that's nice to have them there, and that was great in Cleveland too. I have like 2 or 3 guys always in Cleveland, so it helps a lot when I first came here to US.
I know you haven't had a lot of time in Minnesota yet. I mean, you're probably still in the hotel, but like, what are your early impressions of like the Twin Cities? Of like, have you gotten a chance to do anything fun off the ice?
Actually, it's actually right now. It's like so many games, practices, travel. So right now, like if I have a day off, I'm just do my, like yesterday. I had to do my driver's license, driver's plates. So it's like that kind of stuff. So it's like it's hard because like right now you have such a tough schedule and you travel a lot. So like when I lay down on my couch somewhere, I'm happy for 2 or 3 hours nap. So that's good.
And hotel life isn't that bad either. You get
No,
yourself. Yeah.
like it's about 2-minute drive for practice rink to game rink. So it's so nice right now, and I mean it's especially right now it's pretty cold. So you are not going there like for a walk or something like for like 15 minutes walk, right? So yeah, I'm just gonna stay sharp, take care of my body, and that's my job.
Who surprised you as far as their personality on the team? Like you didn't know them very well, and you came to a new team. Was it like a Middleton or anybody that kind of stood out? Like, hey, this guy's just a fun dude.
I mean, I actually we have a pretty funny group here. I mean, a lot of guys are pretty funny. Like Zuki, Flowers, great. Midzi, you said, Bolts. So like and like a lot of young guys too, like Marat, Trenny, Marco. So I mean, we have such a good group here, and it's always fun to like come to the rink and have practice, have games, and compete together.
How's your you play golf at all? How's your golf game?
Oh, not I mean, not really, and I'm more like the tennis guy because like in Czech it's not that big, but yeah, I mean I'm just have to buy some clubs and start working on it.
Yeah, the boys will get you into it.
Did you play other sports growing up? Did you play handball growing up? Did you play tennis growing up?
I play basketball. I play soccer, tennis too. But I mean, when I start like play tennis or like golf, these like individual sport, it's so hard for me because like if I lost the point or if I lost the game set, so hard to broke a racket, and just throwing everything out. So it's hard for my head because I hate to lose. And that's the same with the golf. You have only one shot, and if his drive to another fairway, I'm gonna be so pissed. So
I'm just like you.
Yeah, it's just so hard to like be like that. And like in tennis, you are more like like okay, next ball, but you have to actually drive for 4 minutes to find the ball. You finding the ball 5 minutes in the forest, and you couldn't find it, right? So yeah, it's kind of hard game. It's actually I have such respect for the golfers because it's really hard to play that game.
For sure. Well, the last question we ask everyone that comes on the show, which again, thank you so much for giving us some time here, David. It's our Waggle golf question. Everybody go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. David, even if it's not going to be a great golf outing, let's have some fun. Who are 3 people you'd want to bring out with you on the golf course for a day? And this could be, celebrities. It could be athletes, historical, dead or alive. Give me 3 people you want to go out golfing for the day with.
So first is Spatch, because Spatch is a good guy, and he's actually playing the golf really good.
Okay.
Really good. So he's playing with me. So he's
okay.
Second one is Michael Jordan is good. He can compete too. So I'm just putting against me and with my dad. That's always fun with him. So yeah, him.
How's your dad as a golfer? Is your dad pretty good?
No, he's bad too, but he's playing with Jordan. So we just ran in the cars together and just watch them play. Just watch them play. I mean, with my brother too. I can put my brother instead of Michael Jordan, because like it's not that realistic too. So like if you go in Czech, yeah, I'm just put my two guys and Spatch with me.
That'd be a lot of fun. A lot of stories, no matter what. That'd be good.
We have a lot of stories from Czech with Spatch. So yeah.
That'll be great. Well, thanks again for joining us after practice today. Appreciate your time. It's fun to see you kind of come into your own and play your game of hockey. So we're looking forward to catching up with you soon. But thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Final segment here, as always, we've got Keyboard Warriors weekly hot take segment brought to you by our incredible friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. Just 15 minutes from where we're recording here at the XL Energy Center. Everyone, there's only a couple more home games here, I believe, before the Four Nations Face-Off kicks off in February. If you get out here, whether it's for your pregame or postgame, check out the tap room. It is a very reasonable walk to the X from there. And to be honest, it's going to be a lot easier to navigate than the insanity of going into a Tom Reed's and maybe being able to stand somewhere. But also at the X, make sure you're getting the Crowler of the Day at section 105 before it sells out, which usually happens by like the middle of the first period. Or you can get Raindrops on tap all throughout the concourse, level 100, 200, and club. Joe, got a couple interesting ones here. And actually, two of them are going to be Wild-based. First one we'll lead in with Minnesota Wild should expect more back-to-backs next season because Craig Leopold outed Gary Bettman's retirement plans.
There probably will be some hell to pay for that, I'm sure. Maybe jokingly, I guess. But they've had a lot of back-to-backs anyways. They've had one of the leaders in back-to-backs the last couple of seasons. How many times have you seen the Wild play Winnipeg in the second half of a back-to-back with all their players injured? So
it's always Winnipeg.
I'm sure Gary will find a way to tweak Craig on his way out at some point here, but no, I think he understood it was kind of all said, and he wasn't meaning to do that. Obviously the executive committee does a lot of things that are important to the league, and I think they're planning on his purposes. And as Craig Bettman told our Mike Russo, I'm not wired to be retired, so maybe those 2-year plan can change into a 4-year plan. Like
now, it will just because of that. Like
if I'm 72 years old and have that much money in the bank, you'd be hard pressed for me to say I'm not wired to be retired.
Gonna move to New Zealand, right? No, it's just funny. Like, is this just time served now because like of how the league screwed the Wild over with the
dead cap penalty,
suitor, like the retroactive penalty? I don't know. It's just funny that, of course, it was Craig Leopold who's the one that like everyone's like, oh, thanks, Craig, for doing this. No more media availability probably for him.
Well, it's funny too because he sat in his suite the whole game, right? Because the news came out and then he sat next. Oh, you can't sit next to Craig Leopold in the owner's suite. That's part of like the superstitions. You have to sit a couple seats away. Yeah. But it's still, him sitting there next to him. It made for obviously. Good theater there, but I don't think there's going to be that much retribution in that case.
For sure. Well, next one up, this is an interesting one. Craig Button, direct quote, "I think the talk about Austin Matthews being one of the best players in the league needs to stop. He's not as good as Draisaitl. He's not even close to Draisaitl right now."
Man. I mean, Draisaitl's in one of those kind of world by himself thing with McDavid and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's some issues with Matthews being injured so much this year. You haven't seen him enough to appreciate kind of just how good this guy is. And I get Craig's point about there's a lot of really good players in this league, and like I think Kucherov is up there too. I think Kirill Kaprizov, when he's healthy, is a top 7 player in the world. But Austin Matthews, with his skill set, I still believe is one of the best players in the world. And I think if he's healthy and at the Four Nations and he has one of those kind of tournaments, then I think people will continue to remember that. I do love Craig though. Craig shoots. He doesn't bull BS you. No. He doesn't. He doesn't. Not afraid of anybody. Not afraid of wrinkling any feathers anywhere in Toronto, Montreal, whatever. Like I love that about Craig, and that's why I've talked to him so often because he's just like the truth serum for everything like that. But
for sure.
I would push back a little bit on Austin Matthews not being close. It's not taking away from Draisaitl because Draisaitl is, I think, top 2, 3 for me. If you him and McDavid are A and B, I guess you want to call it. I don't know what you think, but that.
No, I mean it's really those two, McKinnon and Matthews, are kind of my group, and that's not to say that they're all like exactly even, but I think what gets downplayed. And first, I do think it's a little knee jerk. Like, yeah, Matthews isn't having his best year, but you look at what he's done not only from goal scoring, which is the most important thing for any NHL team. He does it better than anyone right now. He also has such an underrated two-way game. And I don't know what the numbers say like of late, but if you erase this season from the records, like he is a guy that should be getting Selke looks every year, but I don't think the league's ever going to be ready to put a guy who's winning the Rocket as the Selke as well.
Well, I think too what separates those guys as well. You look at McKinnon, he won a Stanley Cup, multiple playoff runs. Draisaitl is one of the best playoff performers of this generation.
It's insane.
McDavid too, and so I think, and not all Matthews' fault that he hasn't had a chance to go on a playoff run. I mean,
Sure.
that's part of it, but like a lot of things, what separates to me, and I think to Craig too, top players in the world is what can you do when it matters the most. So what can you do in the playoff? That's where, I think Kucherov, raises up the stakes there because of what he's done in the postseasons and time after time. So
Yep.
I think if you're going to make a little bit of a nick on a guy like Austin Matthews comparatively to a Draisaitl or McDavid, who they haven't won a cup yet, but you can see them in the playoffs. They don't shrink away from that moment, and not the reason that they haven't won one. So I think that would be one way to kind of clarify that there's a reason that other guys maybe elevate themselves above him in that case.
Totally. Nope, that's very fair. This one from your buddy Greg Wyshynski. And to be honest, every week that he jumps on with Jeff Merrick on Tuesdays on the sheet, we could probably pull 4 or 5 hot takes just from that episode. But we usually record right before they come out, so can't do that. But this is from last week. Wyshynski says, with all of the chatter around the McDavid suspension and how mad everybody is about it, McDavid should take a stand by sitting out of the Four Nations face-off.
Wow, well, that would be one heck of a stand to make.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know if he would necessarily do that. Like, he's not one to make waves, or whether it's in the media or not. But he has the power to make a statement if he wants to. Look at Pietrangelo. He's pulled out of the Four Nations, and he played the other night, right? So, like, it'll be interesting to see. This is not the Pro Bowl type level where guys will pull out for no other reason than they don't want to go to the Pro Bowl. But I think it'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks what guys are going to be dealing with some limited or minor injuries that they might not want to play through. Or, like, if you're, let's say, the Minnesota Wild, and, like, Jonas Brodin is just coming back from an injury. Like, are you worried about him going to the Four Nations? Like, if Gustafson's, like, your number one goalie, and, like, he's working through some things, like, it's a very special tournament, and I get why they're promoting it so much, and I think it'll be good for the league in a certain sense. But the team's got to protect their players, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's something where Connor McDavid somehow comes up with, like, a lower body injury day to day that takes a little while.
Or back to Austin Matthews, maybe Toronto being the capital of Canada. Sorry, Isha. Do they just want to be safe and not let Matthews play for Team USA? You never know. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Last one then, and this one was kind of like, this isn't reporting or guessing or anything, but Russo on his podcast, it was actually a live recording, I think, that him and LaPanta did, brought up the idea, and it sounds crazy because it's unprecedented and the league would never do anything like this, but the idea of Winnipeg relocating to Arizona. It weirdly actually makes a ton of sense after like he said it, and I sat on, I'm like, oh, haha, funny. I'm like, wait, no, that totally clicks with just the trouble that they're having in their market. They can't even fill the smallest arena, which, like, their fans are passionate. There's just not enough of them willing to pay the gate price, and it's a good team. Arizona's ripe for the picking. Like, we know Gary Bettman's getting in there the second he's allowed to. So,
well, like, again, it's hard for a market to lose its same team twice, right?
That would suck. To the same market.
Like, again, and just like it would be hard to imagine Minnesota losing a franchise again, so not in the same, I guess, stratosphere in that respect, but I get how there's a lot of troubles with Winnipeg. I get that there's a business conscience with that. I've also been to Winnipeg in those games, and the crowds are some of the loudest in the NHL, and there is that passionate fan base that follows them deeply. And so, again, this is not like a reporting or whatever like that, but I mean, if you're looking at different, I still think that the league would rather have an expansion fee versus like a relocation, stuff like that.
For sure.
They've already had kind of like the relocation thing to Utah, and like I think I'm sure the next expansion fee will be in like the 1.5 billion range or whatever that might be. So I think the league would probably rather do that than, but you never know how desperate things can get at a certain point.
It could be both if they've got another market that is just perfect for it. I know there's been a lot talked about, but no, that's fair. And yeah, I do not want that. Like, I think, like you said, atmosphere in Winnipeg, incredible. They got really good fans. It's just like economically might come to pass. You never know.
Hard to see Canada losing a team as opposed to getting a new team like Quebec City or something like that, you know.
For sure. But nope, thank you again, Barrel Theory. Every week bringing you the hottest of takes.